what the jury is hearing as they're watching evidence. What this gentleman is saying is not evidence, it's his own narration on this. He is a reporter and he has an agenda. We also had Alex identify Ammon Bundy. Basically, the Bundys are going back on trial. You want to?
Yeah, the Bundys were on trial again for probably the first half. We're at an intermission here, just a quick break before we go back for the segment before lunch. The Bundys went back on trial this morning. 3 or 4 videos there where Ammon and Cliven and Ryan Bundy were all identified by the witness. We then went into a short video clip. It's a video clip of Eric Parker on a bridge giving a statement to Michael Flynn. We were a little bit concerned about that because, if we're honest, Eric's a little bit legally exposed on this issue. They're going to have to bring this up in closing arguments and when they present their case. It could have gone a lot worse than it did. It was a very short video clip in the middle of the continued prosecution of the Bundys, so we felt pretty good about that.
Alex then does point out Eric in the courtroom and that knows him from that. The video is on YouTube and it's not something new that we did not know about. He, at this point in the video, one of the points he says he's not with Flynn anymore, but he could see where Flynn is. Flynn goes back down in the wash. He's not with him, but he can see where he's at from the bridge. All of the defendants object to this because he can't say that it's from the same perspective, but the judge allows it. In that part of the video, Ammon says that the BLM wanted 5 days to get out and they were not going to agree to those terms. He's talking about the meeting that they have when they go over the gate and talk with Tom Roberts and the BLM. He says, we did not accept these terms, so the BLM said they would take 30 to 40 minutes to leave and was telling the crowd to back up and give them time to leave.
The continued issue with Ellis's testimony here is that he was not at the same vantage point of Michael Flynn for most of these videos. At some points he was 100 or more yards away, and defense attorneys are arguing he didn't make this video, he wasn't there, and the judge is saying, well, his vantage point goes to the weight of the evidence, not to the authenticity. So they're allowing someone who didn't make the video, who wasn't standing in the same place, to essentially say, well, from that wide angle of view, from the northbound bridge, which is where he stood most of the time, Mr. Flynn's footage, some of it happens down in the wash, as we discussed before, post number 2 at the gate, 100 yards at least. They're allowing this video evidence as if Ellis was there. They're saying it just goes to the weight of the evidence, not to the authenticity. So defense attorneys have objected to every single piece of evidence, and every one of them has been overruled, and these videos are continually admitted into evidence.
Then we go into the cross-examination. Tomasi started, that's Stephen Stewart's lawyer. He starts with, you met Flynn at a protest in 2013. It was a protest about government shutdown, possibly about the
there was the debt
funding?
Debt ceiling issue. He apparently organized a protest up in St. George, Utah that had to do with a debt ceiling issue. So they were trying to make the point that maybe he went to the Bundy Ranch for a different purpose than Mike Flynn. Maybe, and the next logical conclusion was maybe these defendants went to the Bundy Ranch for some other issue besides, Cliven Bundy's cattle. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Wasn't sure.
As soon as he says that he organized that protest, Stephen Myrie objected. Relevance, it was allowed. The very next question was, did you know why my client was at the protest? There was an objection. That was not, it was sustained, so he could not continue. Do you believe some of the guys carrying guns believed it was their right to? There was an objection. Alex said that Cliven had told them to.
That was a key issue. We haven't seen that in evidence yet. I've never seen that in any of the evidence that's been presented. This gentleman said, the question was, do you believe that they were there carrying weapons because that was their right? And he said, well, that and Cliven told them to carry guns. Maybe I'm wrong. I've never seen that. You scoured the bowels of the internet looking for videos on this issue. I have never heard Cliven Bundy say, take your guns and go get my cattle. There were no objections to that. I think all of us were pretty shocked. There were no objections to that testimony.
There was objection because he didn't even get to finish what he said about Cliven, and there was an objection.
There were also objections right after that. There is something in an FBI report that this young man gave. He was interviewed by the FBI in 2015. There is something in that report that creates an impeachable situation in his current testimony. There is something that he has said that has contradicted what he has said in sworn testimony on the stand. And Stephen Tanasi for Stephen Stewart, he cannot get to that piece of evidence. As many times as he tried, in as many ways as he tried, the U.S. attorneys objected to everyone, and they were able to keep him from being able to introduce this sworn statement that he gave to the FBI. There's something in there, we don't know what it is.
Then he went back to say, you were up on the bridge, and then you went down into the wash with Mr. Flynn. And he said yes, and then he said, okay, at that point your back was to the bridge. And that's when he finished his questioning, and then we went to Todd Engel. Engel had Mr. Ellis about protesters, because as we know, they're not calling this a protest. So he had him talk about protesting quite a bit, calling them protesters. He said after he took us to a clip and played the clip, and he said, after you heard that lady, did you hear that lady, what she said? And she said, what was it that she said? That's not the BLM. They're not supposed to be down here. And then he was asked if that was true, and he said, no, that's not true. What the sheriff had said was that he needed to talk to Cliven on the stage afterwards. He didn't say the BLM was leaving. He said he needed to have a conversation with Cliven. So basically, what we have here is this witness has been practicing for this with the prosecution for some time, because, you know, once again, that truck picture was brought up, the park rangers with the weapons. Alex says multiple times, yes, he did see weapons trained on the protesters, but he didn't see that truck. They show pictures, Todd brings up the pictures, here's the truck. Do you recognize the truck from this picture? He says, no, I never saw that truck. So every witness that has come in has declined from seeing this truck. I mean, one of the witnesses was 30 yards from the truck.
This is the phantom truck of the Bundy Ranch protest. It absolutely is. Two federal agents do not remember seeing this vehicle with agents with their weapons pointed at protesters. One agent was less than 30 feet away from it. He has no recollection of seeing that truck. And this person who stood on the northbound bridge and was able to see his fellow reporter all the way down in the wash, he wasn't somehow able to see this vehicle with weapons pointed at protesters.
Well, yeah, we saw this truck on the leaked videos.
We have seen this. There's pictures of this. We'll try to put it in the comments. It's a blue Chevy pickup. It's got 4 doors, and it's surrounded by agents, and they're pointing weapons at people. Todd Engel is, by the way, he is still the rock star of pro se representation. Today, he got this witness not only to admit that the BLM was authorized to use lethal force. Todd Engel asked him specifically, did the BLM say they were going to use lethal force? That they were going to do it, and the witness said that is correct. And I think that's huge, because up until now, people have said they were authorized to use lethal force. This witness is saying that the BLM said they were going to use lethal force. And I think that's going to help us out.
Right before we left, the last thing that was brought in, and I believe we're at Todd Leventhal now?
Correct.
He brought up an article that Alex did. What was the article called?
United Police States of America.
And in that article, he says something other than what he said. He said a contradicting statement that completely contradicts his statements today on the testifying.
Yeah, it was in regards to Carol Bundy and standing in front of a vehicle.
That was actually Margaret Houston.
Margaret Houston, not
referring.
Carol Bundy.
He doesn't know who she is.
And they have his article that he wrote, and it's about to be admitted in, or it's about to be shown to him so that he can remember what his comments in that article was. But the government immediately was like, well, we want to see it first. And so they showed it to them and let us out for break. So we're going to go back inside and see if this piece of evidence is going to be allowed in.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
right, so we go back in and they're having a closed court, well, they're meeting without the jury. And this is over, as I talked in the last update, about the article that the gentleman writes that is called United Police State. And they're arguing over what's going to be allowed from that article to be entered. And they agree that one sentence is going to be allowed. And at some point the judge says, because the lawyers are arguing that his state of mind of why he went down is relevant. And the judge says, I'm not seeing why the state of mind is relevant to why he came to the assault. Now she calls it an assault, not a protest. And like I've been saying, we're trying to keep the word protest out. All of the people who are testifying have been told, you can tell, they've been told to avoid certain words like protest, and they've also been told to use certain words like this is BLM police officer ranger, law enforcement ranger, BLM law enforcement ranger. What was it? What did they call the other ones the other day? Every single person though, regardless of who, it's like park forest law enforcement officer.
They've been trying to equate land management agents with your typical local law enforcement.
They actually look like military, though. Yeah.
Well, they were all in the Secret Service, basically. We had our first BLM agent come in that wasn't previously in the Secret Service protecting the president, so that was interesting. But I think it really does say a lot when the judge herself says it's not relevant to why he came to the assault. And, you know, she's been helping the prosecution all the way along. One of the days, she actually, while they were having the witness testify, was looking up case law to help the prosecution keep something out from the defense, right?
Yeah, she provided defendants or defense with case law to show why they shouldn't be allowed to admit certain evidence. That's the job of the U.S. attorney, not an impartial judge. You know, she's using her judicial discretion in a way that's particularly egregious in this case. We're going to see more of it in the next few weeks. You know, back to what Andrea said about the use of the word protest, that is really suppressed in this trial. People are allowed to reference protesters, but they are not able to categorize what happened on April the 12th as a protest. Today, Alex Ellis, toward the end of his testimony, he was allowed to introduce the word standoff. He characterized what happened on April the 12th as a protest. He characterized it as a standoff, to which the U.S. attorneys replied, and they referred to the standoff. So the judge can call it an assault. The U.S. attorneys and their witness can call it a standoff, but defendants cannot call it a protest.
And that's what we're up against upstairs, and it's really frustrating. So we get right back into cross-examination on Alex Ellis. And they are going to allow that one sentence from his article, The United Police State. And Leventhal starts, you stated that the video was one of the reasons you came. You said that Mrs. Bundy was in the video and she was standing in front of a truck and then she was tackled to the ground. So then he brings up he shows him his article to remind him what he said in his article. And in his article, I believe he did not say that he was standing in front of a truck.
Don't tread on us, baby!
Right. Thank you! But that she was grabbed around the neck and thrown to the ground. And so that was allowed in. And then he was asked how many times he had met with the FBI. And that was 3 times. One in St. George, one in Salt Lake, and one here. Then he was asked how many times did you meet with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
The U.S. attorneys.
And I didn't get how many.
He met with them at least twice.
3 times.
It was recent, obviously yesterday, today, yesterday. Prior to that, I think back in January, and then another time or 2 before that.
Exactly.
So he's had 3 coaching sessions with the U.S. attorneys. Is what that boils down
and
to.
the last one was Stephen Myrie in January. He was asked if he pointed out people and asked who they were, if he was given names. And he said, no, I was asked if I recognized certain people, and I would say yes or no.
Our BLM agent on the stand today, his name is Logan Briscoe. He was in charge of the security detail surrounding the incident command post. He had about 10 people subordinate to him. They had 4 positions that they manned. Post number 1, we've talked about off of the southbound lane, just past the Tocop Wash. Post number 2, which was under the southbound bridge. They also had something they called post number 6, to watch your 6, watch your back. That was north of the incident command post. And the video that we saw, the aerial surveillance up on the mesa, just east of the wash, it's really high elevation. We were able to see vehicles and personnel. We found out today that that was their observation post for the operation.
This OPOP, which is Lookout Post Observation Post.
Logan Briscoe is essentially, Pete Santilli is on trial now. The Bundys have been given a rest for a few minutes, and now Pete Santilli, we're seeing extensive video from him and some of his interaction, which is very cordial actually, with Dan Love and some of the other BLM agents. He is testifying that things that Pete Santilli said on his radio show caused him concern. It raised alarm. And the only thing that Pete said was, I think Americans should come to the Bundy Ranch. And he potentially said maybe they should bring their guns, neither of which is unlawful. And that's why this case is so important, is because this is an assault on the First and Second Amendments. They are trying to criminalize our lawful exercise of these rights. And the way that they're going to do it is they're going to allow the court to rubber stamp a scenario where you go to protest. They'll characterize it as an assault or a standoff, and they'll say that because you were there lawfully exercising your rights, you are now part of a giant clandestine conspiracy that dates decades back from people that you've never met and that you never knew. And that's why this case is particularly dangerous. Regardless of your opinion of Clive and Bundy, regardless of your opinion of any of the defendants, Tier 2 mid-level organizers, Tier 3 gunmen, that's the words of the court, all of them were protesters. It was a protest start to finish, and they are allowing witnesses to characterize this as criminal activity. That is specifically why this case is a constitutional watershed, and why everybody watching these updates should read about it, should study it, and understand what's happening, because it is going to affect all of us if this goes the wrong way.
Another thing that was brought up, some of the video they're showing of Pete Santilli is off of this officer's body cam. And one of the questions, and you know what I see the government doing here in this case that I'm seeing, is they're bringing forward everything, because I believe in Oregon they tried to hide a lot of stuff and it bit them in the ass, right? So here they're trying to throw it all on the table. So here the government asks him, well, was your body cam always recording? And he's like, well, no, I loaned it out to other officers at times. Well, if your body cam was on your body, was it always recording? Well, no, it wasn't. But it was recording, but he had turned it on for this this conversation between Pete Santilli and Dan Love. So here we have another defendant that is testifying to a conversation between 2 people who are not in the courtroom. And that was brought up by Leventhal. He said, you know what? You can bring Dan Love's available. He's not deceased. You can bring him down here and we can have that conversation. Of course, the judge doesn't want to say it. She says, well, all we're talking about now is why he raised the threat level. And this conversation between Pete and Dan Love helps him raise his threat level, and that's how we're bringing this in as evidence. And this is going on and on upstairs, one time after another. You know, our defense lawyers are saying hearsay, you can't do that. And she's like, no, it goes to someone's state of mind. They're hearing this conversation, and it goes to their state of mind of why they did something else. But then when we say hearsay, it's overruled.
So you got 6 defendants upstairs who had presumably never met Pete Santilli. Pete Santilli had never met them. But because he is labeled as a co-conspirator, and conspiracy is the friend of the government, by the way, because he is a co-conspirator in what they are describing as this conspiracy, everything that he has said is admissible against these defendants. And presumably, when Pete Santilli sits in the courtroom for his trial, right now he's on trial and he's not even there to face his accusers, when he does sit in front of a jury, presumably the statements of other people that he had never met, the actions of other people, the lawful actions, I'll take it that way, the lawful actions of other people that he had never met, they had never met him, those will be used as evidence against him because they're all co-conspirators.
And one other thing to bring up about Alex Ellis. So when Jackson got up, you know, he did this chain of custody on the videos that Flynn's videos, and he was asked if he had the videos in his possession. Apparently, Michael Flynn and himself did meet with the FBI in 2015. I believe it was May of 2015. Now, Michael Flynn did commit suicide in November of 2016. He said, you know, Michael had these. He had given a copy to the U.S. attorneys, and then he was asked if that was the only copy, if he gave them the original. And at that point, his answers got really short, and he said, to the best of his knowledge, I believe, and that the tapes that were in his custody, to the best of his knowledge, were not edited. So what do we have here? We have someone in evidence on their own. They do not have the chain of custody of this evidence, and they cannot prove that it's not edited.
And they didn't have it for over a year.
And they didn't have it in their custody for over a year. So, you know, I don't see how this is going on inside, and I think Jackson did a really good job of bringing it up.
Jackson, who was Greg Burleson's attorney, absolutely pounded the chain of custody issue. It was a very good, well-reasoned argument. The government really tried to confront every defense attorney. They objected to a lot of cross-examination for Alex Ellis. Jackson was absolutely able to get a lot of questions through about chain of custody. I think it was very effective.
And one of the things Eric's lawyer just was able to get in is that Alex did hear over the loudspeaker that they were the word lethal force was they were going to use lethal force, and he also said that it was very hard to understand what they were saying on the loudspeaker, and I think that is huge, especially in our people's case, because they were up on the bridge where Alex was standing. So a lot of his testimony is actually good for us.
Did you mention that the witness that's on the stand, Alex Ellis, recognized somebody down there that he said was a child who actually had a beard?
Yes, Michael Flynn was trying to get recordings. He was obviously there upset about the children he watched. He said it over and over again. So he's back on the bridge at this moment, and he's like, there's kids, there's armed kids down there. Do you see these armed? Get a picture of that armed child. Oh wait, that guy has a beard. We'll get that one in the red coat. Like, tweet that out immediately. And he is saying this as he's recording this. So you can't tell me that these videos aren't biased.
And there was never any evidence of an armed child. They quickly skirted past that.
That armed child was a grown man with a beard.
It was a grown man with a beard.
She was a little short.
The last thing I have is Logan Briscoe, the BLM ranger that's on the stand right now. He said his concern was raised over the words of Pete Santilli. He specifically said, well, Pete told people to bring weapons. And to me, a weapon is something that you use to harm somebody. And that's why that raised my concern. Those were his quotes directly. So we got agents that again are testifying that they were in fear because citizens were going to act lawfully, basically.
Let's just play the video.
And he came in uniform.
Yeah.
He did show up in uniform. He did.
Let's just play the video. If you're able to, lawfully and legally.
They've presented no evidence, and I don't think it exists that Pete Santilli did anything.
Well, it's after
It
1
doesn't
o'clock.
exist.
Or any of the defendants that are up there right now. We haven't seen we've seen no evidence that anyone up there did anything wrong. In fact, one of Pete's words is, no violence will happen.
Right.
You have my word. And I heard that in the courtroom today, and guess what? Even today, on April 12th, no violence happened. Can anyone say any violence happened? One of the things that was from yesterday, and I didn't get it out there, but Todd's cross-examination of one of the BLM agents, he said to him, now, were you hurt on the day of April 12th? And the guy said, no. And he said, well, was any other BLM officer or law enforcement officer hurt on April 12th? And he said, no. And he said, were any protesters hurt on April 12th? And he said, no. And he said, well, then I guess you could say that the only thing heard on April 12th was the BLM's feelings. And the entire jury laughed.
You have never seen the U.S. attorneys jump out of their skin so fast to object to that statement. It was good. It was good.
Of course, he just turned around because he knew that saw was coming, he just turned around and walked back to his seat.
Like a boss.
Like a boss. Big smile. That's why we love Todd. That's Engel, Todd Engel.
Todd Engel said the BLM got
Thank
fired.
you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And he's saying this to Mel Bundy. I think this is huge because that may be true, but there was no violent action. So I thought that that was a good thing for us.
Dan Love also, in that recording, he was talking to Pete Santilli, he was talking to Mel Bundy, and he mentioned, he said, you know, Dan Love, he sounds reasonable in the video. He says, you know, you have rights. Second Amendment, we don't have any problem with firearms. But then he turns around and he talks about, but the militia. He says, when you have militia, that is where, you know, violence can be incited. And he kind of tied militia with the idea that that would be something that would raise a threat. And that's a problem for me because there's absolutely nothing wrong. Statutorily, militias exist in the continental United States, and in most states there's statutory code for the, you know, for organized and unorganized militia. So there's nothing unlawful about being in a militia. There's nothing unlawful about being in a militia and going to a protest. There's nothing unlawful about being in a militia, going to a protest, and being in lawful possession of firearms. At least it shouldn't be, but Daniel P. Love and the BLM, that is something that would raise their threat assessment and something that could potentially incite violence.
From the video with Pete and Mel, the officer says he thought Pete and Mel being together means they knew each other. And he came to that conclusion because they were working together. On April 9th, they said they received bolos on individuals who were armed and dangerous coming into the Bundy Ranch or into, you know, their area.
And those two people were never identified. There were never any details given about this report, bolo, be on the lookout. Two armed, violent individuals. We never got any details about what that threat report was.
I think what this is leading up to is you know, they're saying, oh, there was a threat here. I think at one point in court yesterday, somebody said something about a bomb threat on a hotel, but that was stricken off of the record right away. So I believe what they're trying to do is they're trying to be like, okay, well, we came with so much force because of all these threats, because of all of these things that were happening. Well, when we go into the cross-examination, just brings up the fact that here this gentleman admits that he was working 28 hours without sleep. And, you know, at the end of his testimony, he was in fear for his life. He was in fear for the life of the other agents around him. He even goes to say that after the 12th, after, you know, he took his week off and went back to ranger duty, he was still in fear for his life because people wouldn't respect his authority. And he had at one point he had to go and talk to some camper, and he was in fear of doing that. It was like his first ever patrol stop, shall we say, because of this situation. And Jess brings up, well, you know, were you in fear on the 11th? Because they keep bringing up the 11th and these bolos, and he said, you know, were you in fear of your life then on the 11th? I said, well, you know, yeah, he was in fear of his life on the 11th. So that goes to show that they could possibly have been in fear, not because of the protesters, but because of, let's say, Dan Love and all of the false information he was putting in, or the situations of working conditions that he was having the entire team work in. Because as we know now, on the night of the 11th, everyone who was working was made to stay and continue working up until the 12th, and the situation happened that way.
So, BLM agent Logan Briscoe, that's who was on the stand most of today, he reported that Pete Santilli, and we talked about this earlier, Pete Santilli had ratcheted up some rhetoric, talking about people showing up, people potentially coming with weapons. In cross-examine, Eric Carter's attorney, Jess Marchese, points out the fact that this has happened a couple times. They come to testify, and we later find out that what they're saying on the stand about being in fear, and in this case about Pete Santilli ratcheting up rhetoric, that did not in fact land in any of his reports on the 11th that day.
There was also talk of a person in an SUV pulling down to Post 1 which is the entrance into their area, pulling around his vehicle, around the water barriers, and parking. And he then says that he tried on his loudspeaker to tell the gentleman away, to tell him they were in a closure area, and the person did not leave. It's a woman, and it's a silver SUV. In cross-examination, he was asked if anyone actually went up to the vehicle and said anything. It was not identified. We don't know who they were, but that was also one of the things he said he used to increase the threat level or made him fear.
Briscoe specifically said that that vehicle pulling into post number 1 elevated his threat assessment because he said this SUV, we never found out who drove it, we never found out who the occupants were, they never even got out of the car. All they did was pull into the area, and he said, well, it could have impeded our egress if we had to get out. And what come to find out that he said that car pulled into post number 1, created a situation where he believed that none of the protesters would act lawfully at that point. He basically said that his threat assessment at that point elevated because a car pulled into the post, it refused to leave, and that reflected on the rest of the entire protest. Also, Las Vegas Metro showed up at this time. This is about 11:30 in the morning on the 12th. Las Vegas Metro pulls up and they walk up to him and they say, we need you to put away your long guns. You need to put away your long guns. And he was asked, did you do that? And his answer was no, we did not do that. They ignored the request of Las Vegas Metro to put away their long guns. They then took their long guns down to post number 2, down under the wash, where the rest of the protest transpired.
They also, in that questioning, he was asked if the reason that he didn't listen is because Metro didn't have authority over him, and he said, yes, that's true.
So when we walked back in from lunch, one of the first things that Gloria Navarro referenced was the assault on the 12th. She called it the assault on the 12th.